I'd just like to make a couple of very brief comments. There are 2 points. There have been a lot of quotations, as Carlos rightly said, from Lenin, but there are some quotations of Lenin which are missing from that discussion. Lenin always made the distinction, as did the Bolshevik Party, as did the Soviet Union during the period of the Comintern and Stalin. There is a distinction between imperialist countries and oppressed countries. Not everything that applies to an imperialist country applies to an oppressed country. In the imperialist countries, by definition, any progressive movement has to be led by the working class. It never could be led by the bourgeoisie, right? But in the oppressed countries, it's perfectly possible for a revolutionary anti-imperialist position to be espoused by a non-proletarian movement and non-proletarian party. That's point number 1. And it is unfortunate but a fact of life that a lot of anti-imperialism that is coming today in the aftermath of the late 70s is coming from non-communist anti-imperialist movements. And you've got to make up your mind, if it is not led by the working class, whose side are you? Are you on the side of imperialism or those who are opposing imperialism but who do not even pretend to be proletarian? That's point number 1. Secondly, my position in regard to Iran, as indeed to several such countries, is the same as was the position of Marx and Engels towards the Turkish regime. They were opposed to Turkish regime being overthrown by Tsarist Russia, which was the hangman of people's revolutions throughout Europe and of democratic revolutions. But if change came internally at the hands of the Turkish people, this was, of course, much to be welcomed. If they brought democracy, that's fine. I am in favor of the Iranian working class creating a space for itself, using the divisions between the various factions of the ruling class to carve for itself a position and be in a position to actually lead the revolutionary movement. But until such time, I'm damned if I'm going to create that space with the help of imperialism, because I know precisely what will happen if imperialism creates a space. It will be murder for everybody, including some today who are trying to carve for themselves a little niche under the patronage of imperialism. Don't be surprised if Khatamis and Rafsanjanis and Mir Hussain Musawis disappear, because imperialism doesn't really find them quite the puppets that it would like, because it can find other ones. So we've got to be very, very sure that we apply our principles. We are never going to give up the idea, because if we gave up, we will not be communists, that the working class should lead every progressive and revolutionary movement. That is our aim. That is the ideal towards which we must work. But we can never, ever come within a striking distance of achieving that ideal if we thought we're too weak to achieve that ideal. Let's invite the imperialist forces to create a space for us so we can achieve that. That will never happen. That will never happen. Imperialism today, people talk of fundamentalists. You don't want the fundamentalists to have bomb. Well, the biggest fundamentalists are in Washington. Can you find a more fundamentalist regime than that which espouses market fundamentalism at a time when everybody knows the market system is a total failure and past its sell-by date? And secondly, they're actually even religiously deluded. I mean, there are people like Bush. There are people like Reagan. How are they, just because they don't wear a funny turban, how are they less fundamentalist than the fundamentalist in Iran or anywhere else? And I think we have a duty to rise above the general prejudices. Sometimes I believe that the editorial writers of the Daily Mail do better than some of the communists. And the final point I'd like to make is stop the war coalition. I think, Tom, you're quite right. Stop the war coalition at the moment is more progressive than the CPB. I think if I understood your contribution, I think that's the thrust of your conversation. And therefore, we should be soft on them because they're better than the CPB. But I tell you, the divisions within the CPB are reflected in the leadership of the Stop the War Coalition. We, by taking a progressive stand, are helping those who take a progressive stance, both within the CPB and in the Stop the War Coalition. And it is our duty from outside to help those who would be inclined to take a much more progressive line. It's not a question of sectarianism. It's a question of pointing the obvious. This is the duty of the proletariat. Do we really want to be ashamed by saying our troops should go and oppress other people? Because the general slogan would be much better, the troops out, we don't want the resistance to win victory, because that really will spoil the coalition. I do not want, in my name, soldiers, working class people from here going to go and suppress other people's revolutionary movements. Lenin was asked by somebody, you're a Russian, you're always denouncing everything Russian. Aren't you ashamed of it? And he wrote an article, The Pride of the Great Russians. I'm sure, Tom, you're fully aware of its contents. He said, we Russians love our language. We have produced world historic literature. We love the working class movement. It has produced this, that, and the other. We love the Decembrists of the 1840s who created a democratic movement and all the rest of it. But we hate the fact that Tsarism has shamed us all and humiliated us all by acting as a hangman of other people's revolutions. British imperialism has done that too, and the British Army has been doing it for over 300 years. It's time we departed from that tradition and said, no more in our name. We want our troops not to be harmed, and the best way not to harm them is they stay in their barracks in United Kingdom and defend United Kingdom if the mullahs from Afghanistan come to attack. They're not attacking anybody. But if they're going to go and kill others, now, do you ask me, if it's our soldier is in Helmand trying to kill the Afghans, whose side are my sympathies on? Well, I'm afraid I failed the cricket test on that, So that,
What was the difference between you and the Stop coalition?
They're
all opposed
if there is
to British action, and they all want to bring the forces home, and there's a very broad. If you listen to any of the big demonstrations, people who sit on that platform, none of them are what I would call socialists, or very few, but because of the position that they're taking, they adopt and they start to use the phraseology of the left. But you can't build a broad movement on, as I say, there are a huge number of conservative voters and members of the Conservative Party and the bourgeoisie in this country who are opposed to this action, can't see why it's happening. They want to bring.
I completely agree with you. To the extent it's a broad movement, Tom. I give right to every conservative to come to that movement and say whatever he feels like. But equally, in the name of the broad movement, I do not want that conservative comrade to say, while we in the CPGB-ML cannot say what we want because they'll kill the broad movement. I think the broad movement has room for our views as well as any. Yeah. Let 100 flowers bloom and let the working people accept whichever ideas seem the best to them. It is as if, Tom, if you've been following the Stop the War Coalition movement history and proceedings for the last 4 or 5 years, you'd be surprised the influence that we had. At the last conference of the Stop the War Coalition, the CPGB-ML resolution on the question of war was adopted, and that was a very, very good thing. Although in the beginning we had been told we were sectarians, we were incurable, nobody followed us. In the end, that resolution was recommended by the leadership that it should be adopted, and it was accepted.
Would you repeat that for all of us, for him? Repeat what it was, the gist of the resolution.
No, the resolution was that the working class should refuse to cooperate
with war crimes.
Yeah.
It has the power within it. The war cannot be stopped by 2 million people marching. But a few key workers refusing to produce ammunition or to load ammunition or not servicing the warplanes can stop that war, and that was accepted, although at one time it was considered terrible thing. So we are helping the war movement from even the fringes, if you like, not even being recognized as being part of it. We're very much a part of the war movement. We are nobodies of today. We are nobodies of today. But nobodies of today can be somebodies tomorrow. And somebodies of today can be nobodies tomorrow. So it's something that we must have a vision. If we don't even actually aim high, we mustn't be like the Trotskyites, as Stalin used to say, they aim low and every time miss the target. They don't want to say victory to the resistance, because that's a horrible thing, because our troops are still fighting on the ground, and it's a tradition that you support our boys on the ground, right? They don't want to say that. But by saying that the working class should not cooperate with the crimes, what does it mean? It also includes the British Army to say, don't cooperate with this war. down your guns because it's not your war, it's not in your class interest. But we are winning the argument. We're winning the argument with more and more people. And in the name of the broadness of the movement, we must never give our higher ideals of fighting against imperialism and for proletarian revolution. That's the basic point we're making. And I don't think there is a basic disagreement among us here at all on that question.